Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're almost at the end. It feels like we've only just started. Does anyone else feel like that? They've only just got here, and now we're closing the entire workshop. I'm not going to speak for long, but I did want to start by saying what a huge and genuine privilege it's been for me to be here with you. It's really rare that you get to be in such a lovely setting, but with a group of people who are genuine world experts in what they do. Each of you knows far more, probably forgotten far more about this field than I will ever know. And it's just, it's a great experience for me, kind of so new into this role, being exposed to the work you do all around the world, and kind of giving me a lot to think about and lots to cheer over as I go back to Wellcome and think about our future strategy and how we can support this kind of work in the future. What I particularly took away is that a lot of what you do is in kind of really challenging circumstances. You're doing the work you do in places where you don't have the right resource that you'd like, that you're working with perhaps researchers and politicians who aren't entirely bought into your agenda. You've even got attitudes in wider society where the entire basis of your work isn't necessarily seen as something that they want to support. So it has been really humbling. It's been really exciting and kind of fun for me. So a genuine, heartfelt thank you for me for kind of giving me your time and telling me about the work that you do. We've covered a huge range over the past 2.5 days. I'm not going to try and cover it all, but I was trying to remember back into what the various things were. We've gone from everywhere from Glastonbury Music Festival in Britain to Vietnamese farmers. We've played games, we've written poems, but we've also learned about evaluation and discussed the future of policy impacts and policy alignment. We've touched on things which are very light-hearted and how we can make science and research fun and accessible to a wide range of audiences. But equally, we've touched upon how engagement can support people and communities that are dealing with some of the most difficult topics in the world at some of the most difficult times of their lives, and everything in between, all of those issues. And we've got people in the room here who are scientists, who are policymakers, who are practitioners, who are evaluators, just a huge range of expertise and worldviews kind of brought together. And it's not felt jarring. It's felt like we're all speaking the same language, that we're all coming from different perspectives, but towards the same kind of goals. And a lot of that's down to the energy and the enthusiasm that you've brought with you. So I think it's gone hugely well, and it's, a great first experience for me. So as I said, I'm not going to try and sum up everything that we've talked about. I think that would be a fool's errand, given the diversity of issues that we've come up with. But I thought I'd leave you with, I guess, what were the three memories and the three takeaways that I would have going away from this personally. And the headlines for me is that public engagement, internationally. Number one, it's fun. Number two, it's important. And number three, the thing we knew at the beginning, it's complicated. So what do I mean by those three? Well, the fun thing is, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Just looking at people's faces over the past 2.5 days, there's been laughing, there's been smiles, there's been games, there's been talk about how you really enjoy what you do, and not only enjoy what you do in your day jobs, but the reason we're all here is to improve our practice, to learn, to kind of think about how we can become even better. And often that process of learning, of kind of a self-reflection, can be a very kind of serious, deep, considered process. And that's not saying it shouldn't be, but as well as being deep and considered, we've not been too serious in the past 2.5 days. We've still approached this in a fun, convivial, really enjoyable kind of way. And that's kind of one of the main memories I'll take away, that this is not a community that kind of takes itself too seriously, even though you're dealing with serious issues. But again, the second point is it's important. So the fact that it's fun doesn't mean to say that it's not serious. And that's been something I've been thinking for a few years, that I think particularly when we're in a field that's so closely aligned with science and with research, and when we think about science and research, often they have to be kind of very impartial, they have to be dispassionate, they have to be seen as kind of slightly aloof from the subject matter they're dealing with so as not to be biased. It can be tempting for us to fall into that kind of mode of thinking as well. And I think it's a mistake to do that, and I think it's a mistake that we avoid, because although we have that temptation to try and be what I would call completely balanced, kind of to come to engagement with no opinions, to be a blank slate on which the public can draw. Instead, what we do is we bring our passion to this work. We all do this work because we look at the world and we see something that's imperfect. We see problems that we want to fix. We see opportunities to be grasped. And that's what I take from you. You look at your communities and you look at the sectors you work in, and you're not satisfied. You want to improve them, and you want to improve them with the buy-in and the support and the legitimacy and the engagement of the communities in which you work. And I think that's tremendously powerful. And I'd encourage you to kind of continue wearing that passion and that frustration on your sleeve, so that we do say that although yes, what we do is not biased and it's not driven by a kind of an unfair agenda, equally, it's not soulless and it's not a blank slate, that we do bring our passions and frustrations, and those are assets rather than things that are going to hold us back. And then lastly, it's complicated. Again, this is the title of the entire workshop, and I think it's been proven true. We've talked about, what is public engagement? Is it literacy of science, or is it behavior change, or is it something in between? What's the difference between community engagement and public engagement? Should we be focused on measurement, or is the work we do inherently open-ended? Are we talking about observation, and are we talking about participation? I could go on. These are all questions that have been raised, and I don't think we've kind of got considered answers to them. But if you think about why it's complicated, it's pretty obvious, really. It's because public engagement, civic engagement, community engagement, these are all things which involve people, and people are complicated. And some people look at that kind of complexity and think, that's really hard, I'm going to run away from it. And instead what we have here is a room full of people who look at that complexity and kind of go towards it and say, right, in that complexity, there's some opportunity. There's something really rich to be used and to be worked on. And what makes that even harder is that, as well as it being complex, there's no textbook here. All those questions I just raised, there's no book you can go and open that will tell you the answers. There's no policy from Wellcome Trust that will tell you the answers to those. And if there was, it would be you that wrote it, not Wellcome Trust, so there's no help coming from us there. I've been talking to Jeremy Farrow recently, who's a director of the Wellcome Trust, because he's obviously very engaged in Wellcome's future strategy as a whole. And one of the things he notes is that unlike, say, a bank or a supermarket or some other kind of enterprise, you can't distill Wellcome's work down into one number, our profits. So all the work we're doing, even though that it does involve trying to build a theory of change and trying to map out our impacts and work out how we achieve what we do in the world, that's never going to come down to one number. We're the kind of organization that always has to be open to different kinds of impacts, to knowing that when you start out in a new area, you're not going to know what it's going to look like in a few years' time, or perhaps even a few months' time. And I think it's a very similar ethos to the one we have in public engagement, where we need to try as hard as we can to nail down what it is we're trying to achieve and how we're going to achieve it, but at the same time know that even with the best will in the world, we couldn't boil it down to a single number, and nor would we want to, because again, people are complicated. And as well as it being complicated, as if that wasn't enough, it's constantly changing. We've talked about the fact there's new technologies coming around every so often. We didn't even get to talking about things like CRISPR and the gene drive, but that's going to become a huge issue over the next few years. The technology's changing, the methods we use are changing. We had a question earlier which saying, the jobs that we're trying to get people into, they don't even exist yet. So we're constantly working in this kind of period of uncertainty and opportunity to add to that complexity. So the spirit with which you approach that, of enthusiasm, of openness, is really inspiring to me, and I just wanted to say thank you. So that's my summing up. It's fun, it's hard, it's complicated. Maybe nothing that we didn't know at the beginning, but it's always useful to have these things reaffirmed and share those takeaways with people who are trying to address the same kind of problems. And all that remains for me. So I'm going to Kilifi tomorrow to visit Kemri, so it's not the end of my trip in Kenya just yet, but it is the end of my stay here. I'm not going to be at the MESH workshop. So I did want to leave by saying a few thank yous. My first thank you is to all the speakers. You've entertained us, you've affected us emotionally, you've given us your time and your attention, and you've been generous with your own experience. So I'm going to just ask everyone to kind of join me in a quick thanks for all the speakers we've had. In addition, we've been supported by a really phenomenal conference team. We've had Robin, who's been our facilitator, Georgia, Sarah and Annalisa as well, Helen, who's not here, but she's obviously been the person who's designed much of the program, Zena, who's been in charge of all logistics and operations, Jeremy, who's been looking after the AV and solving some problems along the way, and also Eleanor, who's been our scribe and our illustrator. Again, can you join me in thanking the amazing conference team? I also want to say a quick thanks to everyone, all the staff here at Swella Lodges. I don't know about you, but I've had just a brilliant time. I feel like the rooms have been amazing, the food's been great. It's been a really lovely atmosphere, like it's felt very calm and welcoming, and kind of, we haven't had to worry about anything. We've just been able to take all our attention and apply it to our workshop here. And of course, the free-flowing beer in the evenings has obviously helped things along too. So a big thank you to everyone here at Swella Lodges. And then finally, again, as I said before, just a very, very big thank you to all of you as our participants, as our delegates, as our guests, as our experts here at this workshop. You've been what's made this workshop as fun and as lively and as kind of knowledge and ideas filled as it has been. You've brought ideas, you've brought welcoming attitudes, you've brought questions. When the speakers have challenged you, you've stepped out of your comfort zones and you've done things which perhaps you wouldn't have thought yourself doing a few days ago. And it's been really great for me to see. And most of all, you've made me feel really welcome as well. This is my first one of these workshops, and I'll definitely be coming back in the future because I've had a brilliant time and I've learned a huge amount. So from me to you, and hopefully from you to each other as well, one final thank you, and the end of this International Public Engagement Workshop 2017. Thank you.